The mockery. The galaxy was old, filled with countless empires, each rising and falling over the ages. Some ruled for centuries before they were broken by war. Others collapsed from within, too weak to survive their own greed. Among all these, one empire stood tallest: the Valari Dominion. Their fleets stretched across hundreds of worlds. Their warships were considered invincible. Their admirals spoke as if they were gods. When the name of Earth came up in their council chamber, it was not spoken with fear, it was spoken with laughter. The Valari Council gathered in a hall of shining glass high above their capital city. Their voices echoed under the domed ceiling as stars glimmered outside the windows. The meeting was meant to be serious, but no one could stop laughing. "Humans," said one of the admirals, barely keeping his balance as he laughed. "A species that only discovered faster-than-light travel a few decades ago? They think they can stand against us?" Another voice joined in, sharp and mocking. "They have what? 1 fleet? 10 ships? Perhaps 20? Our children's training squadrons could wipe them out." The laughter grew louder. They slapped the table. They poured drinks and toasted to their own power. They remembered how quickly they had crushed other young races, how easily their fleets had fallen. Why should humanity be any different? "Let them shout," one elder commander said, waving his hand dismissively. "Let them pretend to be strong. We will silence them the moment they step into our path. 1 fleet is enough to destroy them." The words carried weight. Everyone nodded. The Valari Dominion had never failed in war. To them, humans were not enemies. They were nothing but an inconvenience. But far away, on the blue planet the aliens mocked, things looked very different. The human fleet was not large, but it was sharp. Each ship was built with urgent sigh forged from fear and desperation. Earth knew the galaxy did not welcome them. They had heard the whispers, the rumors that older civilizations planned to test their strength. Humanity had no illusions of peace. In orbit above Earth, the fleet hung like silent blades. The ships did not shine with alien elegance. They were rough, black, scarred by testing, but they carried something the Valari did not understand, an anger that had been sharpened into steel. Inside the flagship Resolute, Admiral Kane stood alone, staring at the stars. He had read every report. He knew the Valari were coming. He knew they were laughing at humanity, even now. "They think we are weak," he said quietly, his voice heavy with calm certainty. "They think 1 fleet is enough." Behind him the crew worked without pause. Young men and women, some barely old enough to wear the uniform, checked weapons, ran systems, prepared for battle. No one laughed, no one drank. There was no arrogance here, only a cold focus. Kane walked through the command deck, his boots echoing. Every face he passed turned to him, waiting. He did not need to give speeches. His presence was enough. He was a man who carried the weight of an entire world on his shoulders. Outside the windows, the ships of Earth glimmered faintly in the dark, waiting like wolves in the night. Back in the Valari capital, the mocking continued. They played recordings of human speeches, twisting them into jokes. They showed images of Earth's fleet and compared it to training exercises. One of the admirals stood up and declared proudly, "We shall not even use our full strength. Let us send only a single fleet. If they fall, the lesson will be clear. If they dare resist, the punishment will be greater." The council roared in approval. The decision was made. The Valari fleet began to gather, massive warships with sleek silver hulls, each one larger than a city. When they moved, the stars seemed to shift around them. They did not hide their coming. They wanted humans to see. They wanted fear to spread before the first shot was fired. In secret, messages from alien spies reached Earth. The Valari were coming. They would bring fire, destruction, and mockery. Humanity had 2 choices: surrender or die. But Admiral Kane and his fleet chose a third. Kane called his captains together on a secure channel. Their faces appeared on screens, each framed by the dim light of their command decks. No one looked uncertain. No one looked afraid. "The Valari believe we are weak," Kane said. His voice was steady, but there was fire beneath it. "They laugh at us. They say one fleet is enough to erase humanity from history. We will show them what one fleet can truly do. The captains nodded, their eyes hard. Words were not needed. Silence fell as Kane leaned forward, his face lit by the glow of the stars. They think we will break, but when they come, they will burn. The channel closed. The fleet waited. Back in the alien council chamber, the admirals poured their last round of drinks before departure. They spoke of easy victory. They imagined parades and songs of conquest. None of them knew that in the silence of space, humanity was waiting, not with laughter, but with Voss and Iras. The first strike. The Valari fleet moved through the dark like a storm. Dozens of silver warships cut across the stars, their engines blazing with cold light. To the rest of the galaxy, this sight meant only one thing: conquest. Whenever the Valari moved, someone was about to fall. The admirals aboard the flagship Eternal Triumph spoke with confidence. Their voices carried across the fleet's communication channels, calm and certain. "This will be quick," one of them said. "We will erase their fleet before they even fire a shot." "They will learn their place," another added, his tone dripping with pride. "This is not a war. This is a lesson." The laughter that had filled the Valari council chamber now echoed through their fleet. Officers smiled, soldiers relaxed. They expected a simple victory. But far ahead, hidden in the silence of space, humanity waited. Admiral Kane stood at the center of the Resolute's command deck, eyes locked on the star maps before him. The alien fleet was coming fast. Their formation was wide, confident, careless. They believed no one could threaten them. That mistake was already theirs. Kane raised his hand. "Hold positions, not yet." The human fleet did not move. They stayed cold, dark, silent. Their engines were quiet, their weapons charged but hidden. To the Valari sensors, Earth's fleet looked smaller, weaker, barely worth notice. That was the plan. Inside each human ship, the crew felt the weight of silence. Fingers hovered above controls. Breaths were held. Some prayed in whispers, but no one turned away. Every man and woman knew that history was waiting on their shoulders. The Valari arrived in sight of the human fleet. The silver warships filled the darkness, forming a wall of light. They broadcast a message on all channels. A tall alien admiral appeared on human screens. His uniform shone, his expression was amused. "Humans," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "You stand before the Valari Dominion. You are not warriors. You are not rulers. You are children who play with fire. For daring to raise your voices, we bring silence. For daring to raise your weapons, we bring destruction. You have one chance. Surrender your ships and your world, or be erased." His words echoed across the decks of every human ship. Some crews clenched their fists, others bit their lips, but no one answered. The screens went dark. Admiral Kane stood still for a long moment. His crew waited, their eyes locked on him. Finally, his voice cut through the silence. "Fire." The word was calm, almost quiet, but it carried like thunder. In that instant, the void exploded. The human fleet lit up the darkness with fire. Missiles streaked across space, their trails burning bright. Railguns fired, launching slugs faster than light itself. Plasma cannons roared, their blue flames tearing through the black. The Valari fleet had expected hesitation. Instead, they were met with a storm. The first wave struck before the aliens could react. Missiles punched through shields, detonating deep inside silver hulls. One Valari cruiser split apart in a spray of molten metal. Another went dark. Its engines ripped clean away. On the Eternal Triumph, alarm screamed. The admiral who had spoken so proudly before now gripped the edge of his chair. His eyes widened. "Impossible," he whispered. "Their weapons. How?" Before he could finish, another human strike slammed into his fleet. The aliens scrambled to respond. Their ships shifted, shields flared, weapons fired back. But their formation was broken, their confidence shattered. The humans did not stop. Admiral Kane moved like a man who had already seen this battle in his mind. His orders were sharp, precise. Alpha Wing, cut through their left flank. Bravo Wing, target. To the carriers. No hesitation. No retreat. Human ships surged forward, weaving between alien fire. They did not fight with elegance. They fought with fury. Each shot was meant to kill, not to impress. Valari beams streaked through the dark, tearing into human shields. One human destroyer was split apart, its crew lost in fire. Another fell silent, drifting into the void. But for every human ship that fell, 2 Valari warships burned. On the alien command deck, panic spread. The officers shouted, struggling to understand. Their weapons, how do they pierce our shields? How are they moving so fast? No one had answers. The Valari had prepared for an easy victory. They had never imagined resistance like this. Back on the Resolute, Kane stood firm, his voice steady over the chaos. Do not give them time to breathe. Do not give them time to think. Break them before they understand. The human fleet answered with fire. The stars became a battlefield of flame and wreckage. Explosions lit the void, painting the darkness in orange and red. Alien screams echoed over broken channels. Human crews shouted with defiance, pushing forward again and again, and in that moment the galaxy shifted. The Valari had laughed at humanity. They had mocked them as children, but as their ships burned, as their fleet cracked under the storm, the laughter died. One Valari officer, pale and trembling, whispered words that spread across the command deck like poison. This cannot be possible. One fleet is not enough. On the human flagship, Kane heard reports of victories pouring in. Enemy ships destroyed, enemy lines broken. His face did not change. He only raised his hand again. Advance. We are not finished. And so the first strike of humanity echoed across the stars, not with laughter, but with fire. The inferno. The battlefield burned. Valari warships that had once looked invincible now floated broken, torn apart by human fire. The black void of space was filled with firestorms, wreckage, and drifting bodies. The proud silver fleet of the Dominion looked less like a wall of power and more like a graveyard of shattered steel. But the battle was not over. The Valari regrouped, forcing their ships back into formation. Their commanders screamed orders, pushing their soldiers into desperate action. Bright beams of energy streaked through the darkness, cutting into human ships. One frigate exploded in a sphere of fire, its crew lost without a sound. Another human vessel spun out of control, engines ripped away. Admiral Kane saw it all, but his face remained calm. He did not mourn in silence. He did not hesitate. He knew every life lost now bought time for humanity's survival. Keep pushing, he ordered. His voice carried across the fleet. Every strike weakens them, every loss makes them bleed. The Valari thought they had seen human strength, but they had only glimpsed the surface. Now humanity showed its true hand. On board the Resolute, the tactical officer called out, "Deploy the swarms!" Dozens of hatches opened across the human fleet. From within poured small, dark drones, machines built quickly, cheaply, and designed for one purpose: destruction. They moved like shadows, darting between fire, too small to target, too fast to hit. The drones carried charges that clamped onto Valari hulls. Seconds later, each charge erupted, blasting holes into alien ships. Valari crews screamed as explosions tore through their decks. Their shields, built to resist heavy fire, were useless against hundreds of small, crawling bombs. One Valari battleship tried to turn its guns on the swarm, but before it could fire, a line of drones cut across its engines. The ship spun helplessly, drifting into the burning wreck of another. Panic spread. The Valari had never faced enemies who fought like this. Their wars were usually slow, clean, decided by massive fleets clashing in predictable formations. Humanity did not follow those rules. Humanity turned the battle into chaos. From his command chair, Kane gave the order, "Strike where they are weakest. Do not fight their strength. Break their pride." Human ships split apart, moving in unpredictable patterns. Some darted forward, launching missiles at close range. Others swung wide, circling around the Valari flanks. Each movement was designed to confuse, to tear holes into the enemy line. The Valari tried to adapt, but for every command given, humanity answered faster. On the Eternal Triumph, the Valari admiral gripped the arms of his chair so tightly his claws cut into the metal, his eyes were wide with disbelief. "They are not fighting a battle," he said in a trembling voice. "They are creating a storm." His officer shouted, "We must retreat. We must call for reinforcements." The great flagship shook. Fires spread across its decks, alarms screamed. The Valari admiral stood at his post, refusing to abandon his command. His pride held him, even as his ship broke apart. Then the Resolute fired its main cannon. A blinding shot tore through the flagship, splitting its silver body in half. The Eternal Triumph erupted in a wave of fire so bright it outshone the stars. Silence followed. The Valari fleet, once a storm, was now only wreckage and scattered survivors. On every human ship, crews stared at the sight. They had done the impossible. They had broken the Dominion's pride. Admiral Kane stood at the center of it all, his eyes locked on the burning remains. "They mocked us," he said quietly. "Now the galaxy will remember." And so, in the heart of fire, humanity rose, not as prey, not as children, but as a storm the stars would never forget. The answer in flames. The wreckage of the Valari flagship still burned in the void, glowing like a dying star. Broken pieces of silver hull drifted slowly, reflecting the light of distant suns. For the first time in living memory, the Valari Dominion had lost a fleet, and not just lost, but been shattered. Across the battlefield, the silence was heavy. Survivors from both sides floated among wreckage. Human ships flickered with damage, scarred and battered. Entire crews had been lost, but the fleet still stood. Humanity still stood. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Kane remained at his post. He had not celebrated. He had not smiled. His face was hard, his eyes steady. He knew what this battle meant. It was not just survival. It was a message. Reports filled the command deck. Valari casualties, overwhelming. Their remaining ships are retreating. Some have gone dark. Another officer added, "We are receiving transmissions from across the Dominion's territory. They are in shock. They cannot belied. Eve, what happened?" Kane nodded slowly. "Good. Let them feel it." The Valari survivors scattered, engines flaring as they fled. For a moment, it seemed as though the humans might pursue, finish the job completely, but Kane did not give the order. Instead, he said, "Open the channel, to every corner of the galaxy, make them hear." A hush fell over the bridge. The communications officer hesitated. "Admiral, are you certain?" Kane's eyes burned with quiet fire. "Yes, it is time the galaxy knows who we are." The officer nodded and worked quickly. Across thousands of systems, the message opened. Every world under Valari control, every empire that had mocked humanity, every commander who had once laughed, now saw the face of Admiral Kane appear on their screens. Behind him, the fires of the battlefield burned. His voice was steady, cold, without pride and without mercy. "You mocked us. You called us children. You said one fleet was enough to erase us. Tonight, one fleet stood, and yours is gone." The words spread like lightning. Across the stars, silence fell as the message continued. "You thought humanity was weak. You thought we would kneel. Instead, you met fire. This was not the end of us. This was the beginning. Remember it well." The channel closed. On alien worlds, leaders and civilians stared at the message in shock. The Valari had ruled with fear for centuries. But now, their invincible image was broken. A young species, one they had dismissed as nothing, had turned their pride into ashes. Some refused to believe it. "It must be lies," they said. Others trembled, knowing it was truth. Whispers spread. If the Valari could fall, who else was safe? Back aboard the Resolute, the human fleet moved slowly through the wreckage. Rescue operations began, pulling survivors from broken ships. Every life saved mattered. Every soldier lost was honored in silence. Kane walked the decks, watching his people. They were exhausted, bloodied, but their eyes burned with something new. Belief. They had seen the impossible. They had faced the strongest empire in the galaxy, and won. Yet Kane did not allow celebration, and he knew what came next. "The Dominion will not forget this," one captain said grimly. "They will come again, with more ships, with more fury." Kane turned his gaze toward the stars. "Then let them come. Let them bring everything. We will answer in flames." His words spread quietly through the fleet, whispered from one soldier to another. It was not just a statement, it was a vow. As the human fleet turned toward home, the galaxy trembled. Some feared the rise of Earth, others felt hope for the first time in ages. If humans could stand, maybe others could too. In the shadows, smaller races whispered about alliances. They dreamed of freedom from the Dominion. They spoke the name of humanity with awe, as if it had become fire itself. Meanwhile, on Valari worlds, fear spread like a plague. Mothers hushed their children, leaders hid their panic, and soldiers asked questions they had never dared before. Could the Dominion still protect them? Could their fleets still command the stars? For the first time, doubt touched their empire. And at the center of it all, humanity rose higher. The battle was not the end of war. It was the spark of something larger. The Valari would return. Other empires would test them. The galaxy would not forgive this insult. But Kane knew one truth. Humanity had already crossed the line. They were no longer prey. They were no longer mocked. They had become a force that burned too bright to ignore. On the final night before the fleet returned to Earth, Kane stood alone at the observation deck, watching the stars. The silence of space stretched around him, vast and endless. He whispered, almost to himself. They thought one fleet was enough. They were right. But it was not theirs. It was ours. And with those words, humanity's answer spread across the galaxy. An answer written not in laughter, not in surrender, but in fire. The stars will never forget.